"Get that oxygen tank out of my neighborhood." Beverly screamed at 6-year-old Mia's window, then snuck back at 2 a.m. with toxic chemicals. She poured poison gas into the disabled girl's bedroom heating vent. Beverly didn't know Mia's father was fire chief and would recognize chemical warfare immediately. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The little girl had been born with severe lung disease and depended on oxygen therapy to breathe, but to Beverly, the medical equipment was nothing more than an eyesore that ruined her pristine community. Inside the house, Mia was sleeping peacefully in her hospital bed, her tiny chest rising and falling with the help of her oxygen concentrator. She had spent most of her short life fighting for every breath, but her room was filled with colorful drawings, stuffed animals, and the gentle hum of life-saving medical equipment. "I don't care if she's sick," Beverly screamed louder. "That industrial equipment doesn't belong in a residential neighborhood." Fire Chief David Chen was in his kitchen when he heard Beverly's cruel shouts. As one of the city's most experienced emergency responders, he had saved countless lives, but nothing prepared him for the rage he felt hearing someone attack his disabled daughter. "Mrs. Mitchell, please keep your voice down," David said, stepping outside. "Mia is sleeping and she needs her rest." "I don't care if she's dying," Beverly snarled. "That oxygen machine is ruining our property values. The noise, the ugly tubes, the constant medical deliveries, it makes this neighborhood look like a hospital ward." David's blood began to boil. "That equipment keeps my daughter alive. Then maybe she should be in a hospital where she belongs." Beverly shot back. "Normal children don't need machines to breathe. She's defective, and her medical freak show doesn't belong around healthy kids." Beverly had been terrorizing the Chen family for months with constant HOA complaints. She filed violations for the medical delivery trucks that brought Mia's oxygen supplies. She complained about the wheelchair ramp they had installed for easier access. She even tried to ban the home health nurses who came to check on Mia's condition. "Those medical people are disturbing our peaceful neighborhood," Beverly had told other residents. "The constant stream of nurses, delivery drivers, and medical equipment is turning this place into a hospital zone." She had organized meetings to discuss the medical equipment problem and tried to convince neighbors to sign petitions demanding the Chen family move elsewhere. Most residents refused, but Beverly's hatred only grew stronger. "I've been patient long enough," Beverly had said at the last HOA meeting. "That oxygen machine runs all night, medical trucks come and go, and now they have nurses visiting daily. This isn't a residential neighborhood anymore." But tonight, she was about to cross a line that would destroy her life forever and nearly kill an innocent child. "You know what?" Beverly said with a twisted smile. "I'm tired of looking at that oxygen tank every day. Maybe it's time someone taught you both a lesson about community standards." David felt a chill run down his spine at Beverly's tone. As a fire chief, he had learned to recognize the voice of someone planning something dangerous. "Mrs. Mitchell, what are you talking about?" "You'll see," Beverly replied coldly. "By tomorrow morning, you'll finally understand that disabled freaks don't belong in nice neighborhoods." That night, Beverly waited until the Chen house was dark and quiet. She crept across their backyard carrying a small canister of industrial-grade cleaning chemicals that she had stolen from her husband's janitorial business. Beverly had done her research. She knew that releasing certain toxic gases near oxygen equipment could create a deadly combination. Her plan was to poison Mia's room with chemicals that would make the little girl so sick that her family would finally move away. Beverly had researched her plan carefully. She spent weeks learning about toxic chemicals and their effects on people with breathing problems. She knew that Mia's lung disease made her especially vulnerable to gas attacks. "If I can make the kid sick enough, they'll have to move her to a hospital permanently," Beverly had told herself. "Then this neighborhood can go back to normal." She had stolen the industrial chemicals from her husband's janitorial supply company, choosing ones that would cause maximum damage to already weak lungs. Beverly even timed her attack for when Mia would be sleeping deeply, making the poisoning more effective. Using a screwdriver, Beverly quietly pried open the basement window directly below Mia's bedroom. The window opened into the heating system that would carry the toxic fumes directly to the child's room. Beverly carefully opened the chemical container and began pouring the deadly mixture into the heating vent. The toxic fumes immediately began rising through the house's ventilation system. "Sweet dreams, little freak," Beverly whispered coldly as she watched the poisonous gas flow toward the sleeping child. "Maybe now your family will finally understand that diseased kids don't belong in nice neighborhoods." She had no idea that her chemical attack was about to be discovered by one of the city's most experienced emergency response experts. The toxic gas spread quickly through Mia's room, mixing with the oxygen from her medical equipment to create an even more dangerous combination. The little girl's oxygen monitor detected the chemical contamination and began sounding emergency alarms. At 2:47 a.m., Mia's oxygen monitor began beeping frantically. The child woke up gasping for air, her lungs burning as she tried to breathe the poisoned atmosphere. Her small body began convulsing as the toxic chemicals attacked her already damaged respiratory system. "Daddy!" Mia cried weakly, her voice barely audible through her choking. "I can't breathe. Something's burning my throat." Mia tried to reach for her emergency call button, but the toxic gas was making her dizzy and confused. She fell out of her hospital bed, crawling toward the door while fighting for every breath. "Help me!" she gasped, her lips already turning blue from lack of oxygen. "The air is hurting me." David bolted upright from a deep sleep, his fire chief instincts immediately recognizing the sound of his daughter's medical alarms. He raced down the hallway toward Mia's room, and the moment he opened the door, he knew they were facing a life-threatening emergency. David immediately recognized the smell of industrial cleaning chemicals mixed with something even more dangerous. His years of experience with hazardous material emergencies told him this was a deliberate chemical attack. "Chemical emergency!" David shouted, scooping up Mia's unconscious body and rushing outside. "Someone's poisoned the house with toxic gas." He carried his daughter to the front yard while calling 911 on his emergency radio. Mia was barely breathing, her small body limp in his arms as the chemicals continued damaging her lungs. "This is Fire Chief Chen requesting immediate emergency response to my home address. We have a confirmed chemical weapons attack on a disabled child. I need hazmat teams, paramedics, police and the bomb squad immediately." "Chief Chen, did you say chemical weapons?" the dispatcher asked in shock. "Confirmed. Someone deliberately introduced toxic industrial chemicals into my home's ventilation system while my 6-year-old daughter with lung disease was sleeping. This is attempted murder with chemical weapons." Within 3 minutes, the first emergency vehicles arrived. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars, and hazmat units surrounded the Chen house as first responders prepared for a major chemical incident. "Chief, what's the situation?" asked Captain Martinez as he arrived in full protective gear. "Someone introduced toxic chemicals into our heating system while Mia was sleeping," David replied, still holding his unconscious daughter. "She's been breathing poisoned air for at least 15 minutes. The hazmat team immediately began testing the air around the house while paramedics worked to stabilize Mia's breathing. The readings on their chemical detection equipment were alarming. "Chief, we've found the source," reported Captain Martinez over the radio after 20 minutes of investigation. "Someone deliberately introduced a mixture of industrial cleaning chemicals into your home's heating system through a basement window. This was a planned chemical weapons attack. The chemicals used are extremely toxic, especially to someone with breathing problems," added Dr. Rebecca Stone, the hazmat specialist. "Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. They specifically chose chemicals that would cause maximum damage to compromised lungs." David felt his hands shake with rage as he realized someone had tried to murder his daughter with chemical weapons. This wasn't a random attack, it was a calculated attempt to kill a disabled child. "Sir, we found evidence that the attacker had been planning this for weeks," Detective Rodriguez reported. "There are multiple chemical containers hidden in your neighbor's trash, and we found research materials about toxic gas attacks on people with breathing disorders." "Which neighbor?" David asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Beverly Mitchell. We're getting a search warrant for her property right now." The news crews had already arrived, alerted by emergency radio traffic about a chemical weapons attack on a fire chief's disabled daughter. The story was spreading rapidly across social media and local news networks. "This is unprecedented," reported Channel 7 News. "A chemical weapons attack on a disabled child in their own bedroom represents a new level of hate crime that has shocked the entire community." David's hands shook as he held his unconscious daughter while paramedics worked to save her life. The toxic gas had severely damaged Mia's already compromised lungs, and she was fighting for every breath. "Sir, we need to get her to the hospital immediately," paramedic Sarah Johnson said. "The chemical exposure has caused severe respiratory distress." At the hospital, a team of specialists worked frantically to save Mia's life. Dr. Patricia Williams, the head of pediatric emergency medicine, explained the severity of the situation to David. "The toxic gas has caused severe chemical burns throughout Mia's respiratory system," Dr. Williams said grimly. "Her throat, lungs, and breathing passages have been damaged by the industrial chemicals. Combined with her existing lung disease, this attack could be fatal. What are her chances? David asked, his voice breaking. We're doing everything possible, but the next 48 hours are critical. The chemicals have triggered massive inflammation in her lungs, and her oxygen levels are dangerously low. Mia was placed on a ventilator while doctors used specialized treatments to flush the toxic chemicals from her system. Her small body was connected to multiple machines monitoring her heart rate, breathing, and blood oxygen levels. Chief Chin, Dr. Williams continued, I need you to understand that even if Mia survives, there will likely be permanent damage. The chemical attack has scarred her lung tissue and may have affected her brain development due to oxygen deprivation. David sat beside his daughter's hospital bed, watching the machines that were keeping her alive. His brave little girl, who had already fought so hard just to breathe normally, was now fighting for her life because of someone's hatred. Nurses came in every few minutes to check Mia's vital signs and adjust her medications. The pediatric ICU was filled with other sick children, but none were there because someone had deliberately tried to murder them. Daddy, Mia whispered when she briefly regained consciousness, her voice barely audible through the ventilator mask. Why does my chest hurt so much? David sat beside Mia's hospital bed, watching monitors track her vital signs as machines helped her breathe. His brave little girl, who had already fought so hard just to survive, was now fighting for her life because of someone's hatred. Daddy, Mia whispered through her oxygen mask, why did someone want to hurt me? David's heart shattered. I don't know, sweetheart. But I promise you, whoever did this will never hurt you again. The police investigation moved quickly with David's connections in law enforcement and emergency services. Detective Lisa Rodriguez, working with the fire department's arson investigators and federal chemical weapons experts, traced the source of the toxic chemicals to Beverly's husband's cleaning business. We found Beverly's fingerprints all over the basement window and the empty chemical containers, Detective Rodriguez reported. Security cameras from 3 different neighbors show her sneaking around your property between 2 o'clock and 2:30 a.m. There's more, added FBI agent Sarah Thompson, who had been called in due to the chemical weapons nature of the attack. We discovered detailed plans in Beverly's home office, including research about toxic chemicals, your daughter's medical schedule, and floor plans of your house. The evidence was overwhelming. Beverly had spent weeks planning the chemical attack, researching which substances would cause maximum damage to someone with Mia's condition. She also had photos of Mia's bedroom window and medical equipment, Agent Thompson continued. This was a premeditated attempt to murder a disabled child using chemical weapons. When police arrived at Beverly's house with federal warrants, they found even more evidence of her planning. Her computer contained searches for toxic gas attacks, killing people with lung disease, and how to poison someone's air supply. Beverly's husband, Robert Mitchell, was horrified when agents showed him the evidence. I had no idea she was planning something like this, he said, tears streaming down his face. I knew she complained about the medical equipment, but I never thought she would try to kill a child. Your wife stole industrial chemicals from your business, Agent Thompson explained. These chemicals were specifically chosen to cause maximum damage to someone with breathing problems. Robert immediately agreed to cooperate with the investigation and provided additional evidence about Beverly's growing obsession with getting rid of the Chen family. When police arrived at Beverly's house with a warrant, they found more stolen chemicals and detailed notes about Mia's medical equipment and daily schedule. Beverly Mitchell, you're under arrest for attempted murder, chemical weapons assault, and endangering a child, Detective Rodriguez announced as Beverly was handcuffed. I was protecting the neighborhood, Beverly protested. That sick kid and her medical equipment were ruining our community. You poisoned a 6-year-old disabled child, Detective Rodriguez replied in disgust. You nearly killed her with toxic gas. She doesn't belong here anyway, Beverly snapped. Diseased freaks should live in hospitals, not in nice neighborhoods. Even the hardened police officers were shocked by Beverly's complete lack of remorse for nearly murdering a child. The news of Beverly's arrest spread quickly through the city and beyond. HOA president poisons disabled child with toxic gas, read headlines across the state. The story shocked the public and sparked outrage about the extreme lengths some people would go to discriminate against disabled families. Beverly's mugshot appeared on news broadcasts, showing her still maintaining a defiant expression despite being charged with attempted murder. I was maintaining property values, Beverly told reporters as she was led into court. Disabled children with medical equipment bring down entire neighborhoods. The investigation revealed Beverly's long history of targeting vulnerable families. She had forced 4 families with disabled children to move through harassment, false complaints, and intimidation. The Rodriguez family had left after Beverly convinced the city to cite them for medical equipment violations related to their son's wheelchair. The Thompson family moved when Beverly organized neighborhood protests against their daughter's service dog. The Williams family relocated after Beverly filed dozens of noise complaints about their autistic child's therapy sessions. Mia was Beverly's most recent victim, but her chemical attack had finally gone too far. At the hospital, Mia slowly began to recover, but the damage to her lungs was severe. Doctors explained that she would need additional medical support and might never fully recover from the chemical exposure. The toxic gas has scarred her lung tissue, Dr. Williams explained to David. Mia's breathing will be even more difficult now. She'll need more intensive medical care for the rest of her life. David felt a rage he had never experienced before. Beverly's hatred had not only tried to kill his daughter but had permanently damaged her already fragile health. Beverly's trial became a media sensation. The courtroom was packed with disability rights advocates, families with disabled children, and emergency responders who were horrified by her actions. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of Beverly's guilt, including security footage, chemical residue, and her own recorded statements about wanting to harm Mia. But the most powerful testimony came from Fire Chief David Chin himself. "Your Honor," David said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "Beverly Mitchell didn't just attack my daughter. She committed an act of domestic terrorism against a disabled child. She researched toxic chemicals, planned her attack for weeks, and deliberately introduced poisonous gas into the bedroom of a 6-year-old girl with severe lung disease." David's voice broke slightly. "Mia was sleeping peacefully in her own bed when Beverly tried to murder her. My daughter woke up choking on toxic fumes because this woman couldn't stand the sight of medical equipment. Beverly has permanently damaged my daughter's lungs. Mia will suffer from this attack for the rest of her life. Every breath she takes will be harder because of what this woman did to her." The courtroom was silent except for the sound of people crying. Judge Margaret Foster, herself the mother of a disabled child, addressed Beverly directly during sentencing. "Mrs. Mitchell, in my 20 years on the bench, I have never encountered such calculated cruelty toward a disabled child. You didn't act in a moment of anger or passion. You planned and executed a deliberate chemical attack on a 6-year-old girl who relies on medical equipment to survive. You researched toxic chemicals, waited for cover of darkness, and introduced poisonous gas into a child's bedroom. Your actions constitute attempted murder and chemical terrorism." The judge paused, looking directly at Beverly. "You have shown no remorse, no understanding of the harm you caused, and no indication that you would behave differently if given the chance. Therefore, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole." Beverly's face went white as the sentence was announced. "Life? But I was just trying to improve the neighborhood." "You tried to murder a disabled child with toxic gas," Judge Foster replied firmly. "You're fortunate this court doesn't have authority to impose a harsher sentence." As Beverly was led away in chains, she looked back at David and Mia with hatred still burning in her eyes. Even facing life in prison, she felt no sympathy for the child she had tried to kill. The news of Beverly's sentence made international headlines. HOA president gets life for chemical attack on disabled child, read newspapers around the world. The story sparked global conversations about hate crimes against disabled individuals and the need for stronger protections for vulnerable children. Congress passed emergency legislation, nicknamed Mia's Law, which classified chemical attacks on disabled individuals as federal terrorism and established mandatory life sentences for such crimes. President Anderson signed the bill in a White House ceremony, with Mia and David in attendance. "No child should ever fear that someone will try to poison them because they need medical equipment to survive," the president said. Meanwhile, the Riverside neighborhood underwent a complete transformation. Beverly's arrest had shocked residents into examining their own attitudes toward disabled families. The new HOA board, elected immediately after Beverly's conviction, consisted of healthcare workers, parents of disabled children, and community advocates. Their first act was to establish a medical equipment welcome policy and create support programs for families with special needs. Neighbors organized fundraisers to help the Chin family with Mia's increased medical expenses. The community also created a memorial garden for children with chronic illnesses, with a special section honoring Mia's courage. Mia became a symbol of resilience for disabled children everywhere. Despite her worsened condition, she maintained her cheerful spirit and determination to help other kids facing similar challenges. "I'm still alive and that's what matters," Mia would tell visitors. "The mean lady tried to hurt me, but I'm still here and I'm still fighting." 6 months after the attack, Mia was invited to speak at a conference for families dealing with childhood chronic illnesses. Though she needed extra oxygen support, she addressed the audience with remarkable strength. "Sometimes people are very mean because they don't understand," Mia said, her small voice amplified by the microphone. "But that doesn't mean we should hide or be ashamed of needing help to breathe or walk or see. Our medical equipment isn't ugly or weird, it's amazing technology that helps us live our lives. When someone is mean about our differences, remember that the problem is in their heart, not in our bodies." The audience gave Mia a standing ovation, many people wiping away tears at her words of wisdom and courage. In prison, Beverly faced the harsh reality of life behind bars. Her chemical attack on a disabled child had made her infamous among inmates, who had their own code of justice for people who hurt children. She spent every day in solitary confinement for her own protection, completely isolated from human contact. The woman who had once controlled an entire neighborhood now lived in a tiny cell with no power over anything. Beverly's family abandoned her completely. Her husband divorced her and moved to another state with their children. They changed their last name and refused all contact with the woman who had tried to murder a child. Years passed and Beverly's appeals were repeatedly denied. The evidence against her had been overwhelming, and her complete lack of remorse during the trial convinced judges that she belonged exactly where she was. Meanwhile, Mia continued to grow and thrive despite her additional health challenges. She started a foundation providing emergency medical equipment to families whose devices were damaged or destroyed. "Every child deserves to breathe safely in their own home," Mia would say. "Nobody should ever have to worry that someone might try to hurt them because they need medical help." On the 5-year anniversary of the chemical attack, the Riverside community held a celebration of inclusion and medical awareness. Mia, now 11 years old, was the guest of honor. As she addressed the crowd from her wheelchair with oxygen tubes helping her breathe, Mia spoke about forgiveness, strength, and the power of community support. "5 years ago, someone tried to kill me because I needed help breathing," Mia said, her voice stronger despite her damaged lungs. "But look at what our neighborhood has become. We've learned that medical equipment isn't scary, it's helpful. We've learned to support each other instead of being afraid of differences. I forgave Mrs. Mitchell a long time ago, not because what she did was okay, but because staying angry would have hurt me more than it hurt her. She's in prison forever, but I'm here surrounded by people who love and accept me exactly as I am." The crowd erupted in applause, giving Mia the recognition she deserved for turning trauma into triumph. Fire Chief David Chen watched his daughter with immense pride. "Beverly thought she could eliminate Mia by poisoning her room," he reflected. "Instead, she made Mia stronger and inspired an entire community to be more inclusive and supportive." Mia faced a chemical weapons attack and responded with love and forgiveness. She taught us all that true strength comes not from hurting others, but from helping them. As for Beverly Mitchell, she remained in prison, finally understanding the magnitude of what she had done. She had tried to murder a child with toxic gas because of her own prejudice and hatred. The woman who had once wielded power over an entire neighborhood now lived in complete isolation, forgotten by the world except as a cautionary tale about the consequences of targeting innocent children. Mia Chen had survived Beverly's chemical attack and grown up to make the world safer for disabled children everywhere. Beverly had lost everything: her freedom, her family, her reputation, and her future, because she couldn't accept that a little girl with medical equipment deserved the same safety and respect as any other child. In the end, love had triumphed over hate, inclusion had conquered prejudice, and a brave little girl had shown the world that true strength comes from breathing life into others rather than trying to poison them. The story that began with Beverly's scream of hatred had ended with Mia's message of hope and healing. Justice had been served, lessons had been learned, and a community had been transformed. Beverly Mitchell's name would be remembered only as a symbol of what happens when prejudice and hatred escalate to attempted murder. But Mia Chen's name would be remembered as a symbol of resilience, forgiveness, and the unbreakable human spirit that refuses to be extinguished by cruelty. The little girl who had been targeted for needing help to breathe had grown up to help other children breathe easier in a world that finally understood the value of every life. And somewhere in a prison cell, Beverly finally understood that the real sickness had never been Mia's lung disease. The real sickness had been Beverly's inability to see the beauty, strength, and worth in every child, regardless of their medical needs. That lesson had cost her everything, but it was a lesson the world needed to learn. And thanks to brave Mia Chen, it was a lesson that would never be forgotten.